What is a gate plugin? What are the parameters associated with all gate plugins, and how can we use a gate plugin to achieve better sounding mixes? Hey everyone, my name is Chris Green. In this series of videos, I'm going to be talking about basic mixing principles, basic plugins that are standard with mostly any digital audio workstation you're using, whether that's Presonus Studio One, Pro Tools, Ableton, Logic. No matter what it is, they're all going to have very familiar plugins. Today's video is all about the gate. So with that being said, let's get started with the gate plugin. Of course, if you're using Studio One, whatever track you want to add a plugin to, just make sure that track is selected. Make sure you have your inspector or your info view loaded. Hit this plus button over here, navigate to the Presonus folder, and then scroll down till you see gate. Other digital audio workstations might label their gate as a noise gate. A noise gate or a gate is basically going to be the same thing. Just go ahead and load a gate plugin on whatever track you happen to be using. In today's example, I'm going to be using a gate plugin on the lead vocal track. You can also use a gate plugin on guitar tracks, drum tracks, bass guitar. Doesn't matter what the track is, a gate's going to be pretty standard. So what does a gate actually do? All gate plugins are basically either allowing us to hear audio or they're limiting the audio so that we can't hear anything at all. Have you ever had a track where it has noise, like a fan noise from your laptop? Maybe you had mic bleed. Maybe you're recording a snare drum, but you hear too much hi-hat in your snare drum track. Well, that's where gate plugins are useful. Gate plugins allow us to turn down the audio automatically at certain points. Here on the screen, you can see a nice readout of what's exactly happening to the audio. The threshold knob is telling us at what point are we going to start turning down the audio. So if I turn this threshold knob all the way up, you see that the point at which the gate closes, when the gate closes, everything below this point is going to be silent. I can show you this by turning the threshold all the way up to 0, meaning we're not letting any audio pass through. And then we're going to change the reduction. The reduction amount is going to be 72 decibels. So everything quieter than 0 dB is going to be turned down by 72 decibels. What does that sound like? Well, on our lead vocal track, if I hit the space bar, take a listen. You didn't hear any audio. Why is that? You didn't hear any audio because our gate was set too high. Let's mess around with the threshold knob on this lead vocal, and then you'll start to notice audio coming through. So I'm going to hit play, and then I'm going to turn this threshold knob down, and as I do, you'll start to hear more and more of the lead vocal. Here we go.
The traffic's finest, and I confess I miss those simpler times when Mama's sweet voice woke me with a sunny song.
So you can see on the screen visually what's happening. You can also hear that as our threshold was moving down, you heard more and more of the audio. Now, how can we use this to our advantage? On the screen, you'll see a readout. There'll be a blue dot moving around. That blue dot is telling us what volume is trying to actually come through the gate. So this first phrase, I'm going to set it to a loop, and let's take a listen.
Most mornings I wake up to traffic's finest.
That sounds pretty good, but on the P of most mornings I wake up, listen to what happens to the P. It's gone, like we can't hear it anymore.
Most mornings I wake up to traffic's finest.
Same thing happens on this st, the ST of finest. This means my threshold is set too high. I need to bring the threshold down. Now our threshold is set to negative 31.5 dB. Let's see how much of the lead vocal we can hear.
Most mornings I wake up to traffic's finest.
That's pretty good. What we want to see is that when you have information like the lead vocal, we want to see the blue dot hovering above the threshold. Everything below the lead vocal, just like the sound of the ambient noise in the room, we want to turn that down, especially if you're in a noisy environment. If you're in a noisy environment, reach for a gate plugin. On the reduction range knob, you don't have to have it set to negative 72 decibels. Again, What this means is everything below 31.5 decibels is getting turned down by 72 dB. Well, what if we only want to turn it down by 25 dB? Let's take a listen now. So our gain reduction is only going to be 25.
Most mornings I wake up to traffic's finest.
Now there's still some stuff happening on the ends of Lana's words. We can get to that with the attack and release knobs in just a minute. But mess around with the reduction range knob. Especially if you're doing this on an instrument track, it can sound really unnatural for you to have stuff turned down by 70 dB below the gate. The gate will become more and more obvious. You can use this as a subtle effect if you set your gate reduction range knob to something like 12 or 10 dB. What that means is everything below the threshold is getting turned down by 11.16 dB. It makes the gate more subtle.
Most mornings I wake up to traffic's finest.
There are going to be positives and negatives whenever you're using a gate. If you're using a gate on a lead vocal track, you can't see right here. It just looks like there's nothing being performed in the audio track. On Studio One, I can zoom in with this knob right here, and what you'll be able to see is that there's actually a vocal breath happening before she sings Most Mornings I Wake Up. Whenever you slap a gate on, especially in a way like this, you're taking something that was very quiet and nuanced, like a breath, and you're basically eliminating it. So if you're doing a pop track or something that's supposed to sound really modern, something like a Taylor Swift or Maroon 5 song, you can use a gate. It'll make it sound a lot cleaner, but just know that there are going to be negatives as well. You're not going to be able to hear those breaths. If you want to save the breaths, you need to go in and specifically either cut out those breaths and process them on a separate track, or, like I said, you can just go with the negatives and say, well, I'd rather just have a clean audio track. I'm okay with losing things like a breath. So that pretty well covers the threshold and reduction range of a gate plugin. Again, a threshold, you want to make sure you set the threshold so that the content that you're looking for, like on a lead vocal, I want to make sure I'm getting as much of the lead vocal in as possible. And then I want to make sure the gate closes on the things that aren't the lead vocal. The reduction range, the more minimal you go with the reduction range, the less of an effect the gate is going to sound. If you set this thing to 72 decibels, you're basically not going to hear anything below the gate. If you do something a little more conservative, 25 decibels, probably the most you need to go. 10 decibels is going to be a more natural sounding gate. The other settings that we have on a gate are the attack, hold, and release. The attack knob is how long it takes for the gate to open. So if the attack knob is how long the gate takes to open, the release knob is how long it takes for the gate to close. Think about it like a barn door or a gate to a farm. The heavier the door is, that would be a slower attack. It just takes longer to open up the gate. Let's isolate this lead vocal. I'm going to set it to a loop. Right now we have a 5 millisecond attack time. That's a very quick attack. This is the quickest you can probably get away with in Studio One. Let's slow this down and let's make a really slow attack time. Listen to what that does to the lead vocal now.
Most mornings I wake up to traffic's finest.
It gives this sense of swelling. It's almost like I've got a fader and I'm making the vocal kind of swell in like you would do on a guitar, okay? Most of the time, this is not what we want to have. On a gate, 9 times out of 10, you want the gate to be as quick as possible. Let's set it back to 5 milliseconds so you can compare.
Most mornings I wake up to traffic's finest.
Now, the next knob we have here is the hold. The hold is letting us know how long is this gate going to be open before it starts to close. It's not the same as the release knob. The release is the process of the gate actually closing, so the gate is moving. The hold knob is as if you just ran through the gate and you're holding the gate open for your friend to get through, okay? How long are you going to hold it for? Usually, I don't use the hold knob. Most of the time, I'm setting the hold knob to be as quick as possible. I want to be more dependent on the attack and the release knobs. It's just a lot simpler way to think about things. If you decide to use the hold, I would only set it to something maybe like 4 or 5 milliseconds at a time. Let's turn the hold up pretty high. Let's set the hold to about 108 and give a listen to how that sounds. And again, you can visually see what's happening, even if you're not being able to hear the nuances of this. Look at this yellow gain reduction meter. Notice how long it stays where it's at, and then it quickly goes away.
Most mornings I wake up to traffic's finest.
Okay, so if I increase the hold all the way to a 1 second hold, let's see how long that stays.
Most mornings I wake up to traffic's finest.
So in our passage there, as soon as she started singing, you never saw the gate close, okay? It stayed open throughout the entire phrase. This could be useful, again, if you want to have a subtle gate. It would basically close the gate after she finished singing, but it's set to 1 second, which is pretty long. I usually set the gate's hold. I'm going to set it to about, 2 to 5 milliseconds would be just fine. I want to focus mainly on the release knob. Like I said before, the release knob is how quickly the gate closes. The attack knob is how quickly the gate opens. The release knob is how quickly it closes. Let's turn this release knob up quite significantly and watch how slow this yellow gain reduction meter is moving away.
Most mornings I wake up to traffic's finest.
You see, as soon as she finishes singing the word finest, look how slowly this yellow gain reduction meter starts to creep where it's supposed to go.
It's finest. And
It doesn't even get to the negative 25 decibels before she starts singing her next phrase. That's a very slow release. Let's go to a very quick release. Now watch how quickly the gain reduction meter gets right into place.
the traffic's finest.
Now this release knob is very important because, as I was mentioning earlier, the P's, the S's, the T's, the ends of the words that she's singing, they're getting cut off by this gate. So what we need is a longer release time and possibly even a longer hold time. So if I have a hold set to kind of a medium setting, about 16 milliseconds, and I have this release set to 400 milliseconds, let's take a listen and specifically listen to the ends of the words.
Most mornings I wake up to traffic's finest.
That actually sounds pretty good. This would be a setting I would probably use for Lana's lead vocal. It didn't chop off the S's, T's, or the P's at the ends of her words, but it did go quick enough so that as soon as she's finished singing, we have this empty space. This is where I'm cutting out any sort of air conditioning rumble, any sort of unnecessary noise. I just want it to clean up a little bit. I don't want it to be too noticeable. So as far as vocals go, I'm going to set the threshold to where I'm getting a majority of all the words out. I'm going to set the gain reduction to something conservative, probably 25 decibels. If you go to 70, it's going to sound a little bit unnatural, or it's going to be a more dramatic effect. Then my attack knob is set to a quick 5 milliseconds. I've got a hold of 16 milliseconds, and I've got a release of 400 milliseconds. Let's turn the gate completely off. I'm going to bypass. Let's take a listen.
Most mornings I wake up to traffic's finest.
Let's turn it on.
Most mornings I wake up to traffic's finest.
Now, unless you're using headphones, when you get into the nitty-gritty of the nuances, you're going to want to use a gate. If you've got a drum track and you're trying to get rid of cymbal bleed, these are the situations where a gate comes in handy. If you've got the time to set it, you can make a little preset of this is my lead vocal gate settings, and then you can just tweak the threshold depending on from song to song. Tweak the threshold to be what you need it to be, and then apply this to your vocal tracks. A gate is a necessary plugin. It's pretty easy once you get the hang of it to just quickly set up a gate, and it's going to clean up your audio. If you have noises from a fan or your laptop, if it's noisy in the background and then you have that spilling over 20, 30 tracks of a song, it's going to add to itself in a cumulative effect. So that is it for the gate. I want to thank you so much for watching. Be sure to hit the subscribe button for more content just like this. We'll be bringing out more mix tip videos just like this. My name's Chris Green. I'll see you next time.